have never thought of quitting seriously. I don't, you know, it's funny because I was recently in a conversation with someone, not because of this, but just they brought up the idea of quitting, that they had thought about quitting. And, I told that kind of funny story about how I broke my toe when I was training for the marathon, the LA marathon, and I got like some minor rejection, like a couple of days later. And I was just feeling really sorry for myself, and it was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna like pretend I'm quitting, violin, little violin and all. But it wasn't like, it was really just kind of giving myself permission to quit for a day, And I really think at that time I was training, like working it, on mileage, and I was able to have a studio practice, teach and train all at the same time, and it was just something that disrupted that routine, and it kind of like upset me, but I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to quit. um I will say that, I've never had children. I don't have responsibilities to anybody else, so like quitting for the greater good has never been something I've had to entertain. When this is going to be a little on the depressing side, but when my mom needed help and I was going through a divorce, I knew I would have to move back to Nashville to help her. And, I just, in my mind, she was 87, and I gave myself like 15 years that she would live to 105 or something, and that I would put, the career aspect of my practice on hold. Like, I didn't think about quitting making art, but I knew that moving to Nashville after being in Los Angeles would be different, and I knew that I would have a lot of responsibilities, which I was happy to do, and I was happy to make that sacrifice. But then she died like right as I was waiting for the moving van. So when I got to Nashville, I didn't have that opportunity to quit. When I got home here in Nashville, it was like my purpose, kind of like I was prepared to let go of that being my priority of making art and having an art career, just for 15 years, which sounds kind of strange at the time, that to project like, okay, she'll live to 105, that's padding and all that. But that didn't happen, and so it's like I haven't really had a good enough reason after that to quit.
Right.
And I mean, that's kind of, I think, the gist of it, really. I just haven't had a reason to quit. I don't know what else I would do.
Mhm.
When I mean, I've wanted to be an artist ever since I was a little child. Um, and then, just really don't know quite how the rest of the world really works. I'm not that balanced. I'm
Yes.
really, truly not that balanced. And um,
And what was it in when you were a child? Like, what was it? Did you see models of artists, or were you just a maker, or what was it in you that had that like early conviction of this is it for
I
me?
think I was just super visual as a communicator. I guess I'll bring up now that I was formally diagnosed as autistic about sometime last year, after years of suspecting.
Mhm.
But I was very visual as a child, and I was given cameras and art supplies like all the time, kind of, for Christmas and birthdays. Um, I crossed out the name of an illustrator when I was like 2 and wrote my name, in one of the books. And we had coffee table art books. And so I just poured over those. Um, and I was also interested in philosophy, in like as a 9-year-old. So it's like I just had this desire to, I mean, I didn't know I was putting those two things together, but I
Yeah.
was just a very visual person, and I enjoyed documenting things and walking around and collecting leaves and specimens, and had all the golden books of nature. So
Hmm.
yeah, I don't, there were no artists in my family. My grandfather was a photographer, but I didn't know that until I was well into adulthood.
Wow.
So yeah.
You're not the only one who has mentioned a later, like very recent diagnosis of autism related to, it's okay. Sorry, my renter is doing laundry, so he just came through. Yeah, that's come up another time with an artist.
Well, I think, at the time, I never thought of art as a hobby, even as a kid. It was like literally part of my daily life of just, and that wasn't like I was painting, like I had oil pastels and, you know, it was just glue and tape. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's just like
You were,
making and constructing and kind of creating. I did want to be a puppeteer at one time as a child. So it was just, kind of all that. And I guess just most importantly, it was like I was encouraged, like I didn't receive special lessons as a kid in art or anything, but you know, just I was encouraged with art supplies and gifts, gift certificates to art magazines and stuff like that. Um,
mhm.
and so, I think looking back, it's kind of like that's like they call it a special interest, but it was just something that I was really drawn to. And
Yeah.
have never fades into my life. And I think, I started out as a painter, but in grad school, so when I was in my early 30s, I started working with video and I started documenting my life and just,
Hmm.
not straight on, but more experimental. And I always at that point, wanted to fold my life into my art. And part of that was this long-term plan of like, if all else goes haywire, then I'll still have this ability to kind of record my life as art or make art out of everyday life. When I was kind of coming of age as an artist, it was a very different climate. One, as a woman, you just had to really be, you know, stand your ground.
Yeah.
There were double standards. It was like, it's just a lot of that. And, I've been like a little feminist ever since I was like in, I don't know, seventh, eighth grade. I don't know. Um, so there was, just that. And then the idea of it was like single track, like I'm going to be an artist and nothing's going to get in my way, kind of. And, over the last couple of decades, it's like family and artist, and, it's kind of the idea of balance is definitely in there. And
Mm.
I'm just not a very, balanced person when it comes to things like that. So I'm a little embarrassed that I don't have something else that is driving me.
Mm.
But I also kind of feel like art is like I feel it's tied into kind of like my idea of social justice or just this kind of responsibility, I guess. Like it's not like I don't look at art as like, oh, I'm just making paintings to sell somewhere and have shows. It's like it
Yeah.
goes way deeper than that for me.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I think as a painter, I think painters get like a bad rap for, like sticking something on the wall kind of, Um, and
They're
that's
estimated for that. Yeah.
and I mean I'm not painting right now, and I'm really fine with not painting. But it's more for me about having a practice that is more fluid and responsive and kind of lets me kind of deal with some issues that aren't like in my studio or my house, you know.
Yeah.
But I do really feel that if someone is driven to have another thing in life other than art, then, you know, pursue it, you know.
Yeah.